Praise the Father. It is raining. It has not rained like this in months, and it's beautiful. So, I'm going to read from the Book of Wisdom before I have to go to my JOB. Chapter 11. She, wisdom, prospered their works in the hand of a holy prophet. They traveled through a desert without inhabitant. They pitched their tents in trackless regions. They withstood enemies and repelled enemies. They thirsted and they called on you. The water was given to them out of the flinty rock, and healing of their thirst out of the hard stone. For by what things their enemies were punished? By these they in their need were benefited, when enemies were troubled with clotted blood instead of a river ever flowing fountain, to rebuke the decree for the slaying of babies. You gave them abundant water beyond all hope, having shown by the thirst which they had suffered how you punished the adversaries. For when they were tried, although disciplined in mercy, they learned how the ungodly were tormented, being judged with wrath. For you tested these as a father admonishing them, but you searched out those as a stern king condemning them. Yes, and whether they were far off or near, they were equally distressed. For a double grief seized them, and a groaning at the memory of things past. For when they heard that through their own punishments the others benefited, they recognized the Lord. For him who long before was thrown out and exposed, they stopped mocking. In the end, what happened? They marveled, having thirsted in another manner the righteous. But in return for the senseless imaginings of their unrighteousness, wherein they were led astray to worship irrational reptiles and wretched vermin, you sent on them a multitude of irrational creatures for vengeance, that they might learn that by what things a man sins, by these he is punished. For your all powerful hand that created the world out of formless matter did not lack means to send on them a multitude of bears, fierce lions, or newly created and unknown wild beasts full of rage, either breathing out a blast of fiery breath or belching out smoke, or flashing dreadful sparks from their eyes, which had power not only to consume them by their violence, but to destroy them even by the terror of their sight. Yes, and without these they might have fallen by a single breath, being pursued by justice and scattered abroad by the breath of your power. But you arranged all things by measure, number, and weight. For to be greatly strong is yours at all times. Who could withstand the might of your arm? Because the whole world before you is as a grain in the balance, and as a drop of dew that comes down on the earth in the morning. But you have mercy on all men, because you have power to do all things, and you overlook the sins of men to the end that they may convert. For you love all things that are, and abhor none of the things which you made. For you never would have formed anything if you hated it. How would anything have endured unless you had willed it? Or that which was not called by you, how would it have been preserved? But you spare all things because you are ours. O sovereign Lord, you lover of lives. Hello, how we doing? Chapter 12. For your incorruptible spirit is all things. Why indeed? You convict little by little those who fall from the right of way, and putting them in remembrance by the things wherein they sin, you admonish them, that escaping from their wickedness they may believe in you. O Lord, for truly the old inhabitants of your holy land, hating them because they practiced detestable works of enchantments and unholy rites, merciless slaughters of children and sacrificial banquets of men's flesh and of blood, allies in an impetuous fellowship, and murderers of their own helpless babies. Shalom, Brenda. It was your counsel to destroy them by the hands of our fathers, that the land which in your sight is most precious of all might receive a worthy colony of God's servants. Nevertheless, you even spared these as men, and you sent hornets as forerunners of your army, to cause them to perish little by little. Not that you are unable to subdue the ungodly under the hand of the righteous in battle, or by terrible beasts, or by a stern word to make away with them at once, but judging them little by little, you gave them a chance to convert, not being ignorant that their nature by birth was evil, their wickedness inborn, and that their manner of thought would never be changed, for they were a cursed seed from the beginning. It was not through fear of any that you left them unpunished for their sins. For who will say, what have you done? Or who will withstand your judgment? Who will accuse you for the perishing of nations which you caused? Or who will come and stand before you as an avenger for unrighteous men? For there is not any God beside you that cares for all, that you might show that you did not judge unrighteously. No king or prince will be able to look you in the face for those whom you have punished. But being righteous, you rule all things righteously, deeming it a thing alien from your power to condemn one that does not deserve to be punished. For your strength is the beginning of righteousness, and your sovereignty over all makes you the forebearer all. For when men do not believe that you are perfect in power, you show your strength. And in dealing with those who think this, you confuse their boldness. But you, being sovereign over strength, judge in gentleness and govern us with great forbearance. For the power is yours wherever you desire it. But you taught your people by such works as these, how the righteous must be a lover of men. You made your sons to have good hope, because you give conversion when men have sinned. For if on those who were enemies of your servants, and due to death you took vengeance with so great deliberation and indulgence, giving them times and opportunities when they might escape from their wickedness, with how much greater carefulness you judged your sons, to whose fathers you gave oaths and covenants of good promises. Therefore, while you discipline us, you scourge our enemies 10,000 times more, to the intent that we may ponder your goodness when we judge, and when we are judged may look for mercy. Why also the unrighteous that lived in folly of life, you tormented through their own abominations? For truly they went very far astray in the ways of terror, in the ways of error, taking as gods those animals which even among their enemies were held in dishonor, deceived like foolish babies. Therefore, as to unreasoning children, you sent your judgment to mock them. But those who would not be admonished by a mocking correction as of children will experience a judgment worthy of God. For through the sufferings they were indignant of, being punished in these creatures which they supposed to be gods, they saw and recognized as the true God him who they refused to know. Therefore, the result of condemnation also came on them. How are we doing this morning? Chapter 13. For truly all men who had no perception of God were vain by nature, and did not gain power to know him who exists from the good things that are seen. They did not recognize the architect from his works, but they thought that either fire or wind or swift air or circling stars or raging water or luminaries of the heavens were gods that rule the world. If it was through delight in their beauty that they took them to be gods, let them know how much better their sovereign Lord is than these. For the first author of beauty created them. But if it was through astonishment at their power and influence, then let them understand from them how much more powerful he who formed them is. For from the greatness of the beauty of created things, mankind forms the corresponding image of their Maker. But yet for these men there is but small blame, for they too perhaps go astray, while they are seeking God and desire to find him. For they diligently search while living among his works, and they trust their sight that the things that they look at are beautiful. But again, even they are not to be excused, for if they had power to know so much that they should be able to explore the world, how is it that they did not find the sovereign Lord sooner? But they were miserable, and their hopes were in dead things. Who called them gods, which are works of men's hands, gold and silver skillfully made, and likenesses of animals, or a useless stone, the work of an ancient hand? Yes, and if some woodcutter, having sawn down a tree that it easily moved, skillfully strips away all its bark and fashioning it in attractive form, makes a useful vessel to serve his life's needs, burning the scraps from his handiwork, to cook his food he eats his fill, taking a discarded scrap which served no purpose, a crooked piece of wood, and full of knots, he carves it with the diligence of his idleness, and shapes it by the skill of his idleness. He shapes it in the image of a man, or makes it like some paltry animal, smearing it with something red, painting it red, and smearing over every stain in it. Having made a worthy chamber for it, he sets it in a wall, securing it with iron. He plans for it that it may not fall down, knowing that it is unable to help itself, for it is truly an image and needs his help. When he makes his prayer concerning goods and his marriage and children, he is not ashamed to speak to that which has no life. Yes, for health, he calls on that which is weak. For life, he implores that which is dead. For aid, he supplicates that which has no experience. For a good journey, he asks that which cannot so much as move a step. And for profit in business and good success of his hands, he asks ability from that which his hands with no ability. Don't worship idols. Chapter 14. Again, one preparing to sail and about to journey over raging waters calls on a piece of wood, more rotten than the vessel that carries him. For the hunger for profit planned it, and wisdom was the craftsman who built it. Your providence, O Father, guides it along, because even in the sea you gave a way, and in the waves a sure path, showing that you can save out of every danger, that even a man without skill may put to sea. It is your will that the works of your wisdom should not be idle. Therefore men also entrust their lives to a little piece of wood, and passing through the surge on a raft come safely to land. For in the old times also, when proud giants were perishing, the hope of the world taking refuge on a raft, your hand guided the seed of generations of the race of men. For blessed is the wood through which comes righteousness. But the idol made with hands is accursed, itself and he that made it, because his was the working, and the corruptible thing was called a God. For both the ungodly and his ungodliness are alike hateful to God. For the deed will truly be punished together with him who committed it. Therefore, There will also be a visitation among the idols of the nation, because though formed by things which God created, they were made an abomination, stumbling blocks to the souls of men, and a snare to the feet of the foolish. For the devising of idols was the beginning of fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. For they did not exist from the beginning, and they will not exist forever. For by the vain pride of men they entered into the world, and therefore a speedy end was planned for them. For a father worn with untimely grief, making an image of the child quickly taken away, now honored him as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him mysteries and solemn rites. Afterward, the ungodly custom in the process of time grown strong was kept as a law, and the engraved images received worship by the commands of princes. And when men could not honor them in presence because they lived far off, imagining the likeness from afar, they made a visible image of the king whom they honored, that by their zeal they might flatter the absent as if present. But worship was raised to a yet higher pitch, even by those who did not know him, urged forward by the ambition of the architect. For he, wishing perhaps to please one in authority, used his art to force the likeness toward a greater beauty. So the multitude, allured by reason of the grace of his handiwork, now consider an object of devotion him that a little while before was honored as a man. And this became an ambush, because men in bondage either to calamity or to tyranny invested stones and stocks with the incommunicable name. Afterward, it was not enough for them to go astray concerning the knowledge of God, but also, while they live in great war of ignorance, they call a multitude of evils peace, for either slaughtering children in solemn rites, or celebrating secret mysteries, or holding frantic revels of strange ordinances. No longer do they guard either life or purity or of marriage, but one brings on another, either death by treachery or anguish by adultery, and all things confused are filled with blood and murder, theft and deceit, corruption, faithlessness, tumult, perjury, confusion about what is good, forgetfulness of favors, ingratitude for benefits, defiling of souls, confusion of sex, disorder in marriage, adultery and wantonness. For the worship of idols that may not be named is a beginning and cause and end of every evil. For their worshippers either make merry or to madness, or prophesy lies, or live unrighteously, or lightly commit perjury, for putting their trust in lifeless idols. When they have sworn a wicked oath, they do not expect to suffer harm, but for both the just doom will pursue them, because they had evil thoughts of God by giving heed to idols, and swore unrighteously in deceit through contempt for holiness. For it is not the power of them by whom men swear, but it is the just penalty for those who sin that always visits the transgression of the unrighteous. I got time for one more, and then I got to go to the JOB. Chapter 15. But you, our God, are gracious and true, patient and ordering all things in mercy. For even if we sin, we are yours, knowing your dominion. But we will not sin, knowing that we have been accounted yours. For to be acquainted with you is perfect righteousness, and to know your dominion is the root of immortality. For we were not led astray by any evil plan of men's, nor yet by painters' fruitless labor, a form stained with varied colors, the sight which leads fools to lust. Their desire is for the breathless form of a dead image, lovers of evil things and worthy of such hopes are those who make, desire, and worship them. For a potter needing soft earth laboriously molds each article for our service, He fashions out of the same clay both the vessels that minister to clean ones and those of a contrary sort, all in like manner. What will be the use of each article of either sort? The potter is the judge. Also laboring to an evil end, he molds a vain god out of the same clay. He who having but a little while before been made of earth, after a short span goes his way to the earth, out of which he was taken, when he is required to render back the soul which was lent him. However, he has anxious care, not because his powers must fail, nor because his span of life is short, but he compares himself with goldsmiths and silversmiths, and he imitates molders in brass, and esteems its glory that he molds, counterfeits. His heart is ashes, his hope is of less value than earth, his life is of less honor than clay, because he was ignorant of him who molded him, and of him that inspired into him an active soul and breathed into him a vital spirit. But he accounted our life to be a game, our lifetime a festival for profit. For he says one must get gain however one can, even if it is by evil. For this man knows that he sins beyond all others, making brittle vessels and graven images out of earthly matter. But most foolish and more miserable than a baby are the enemies of your people who oppress them, because they even considered all the idols of the nations to be gods, which have neither the use of eyes for seeing, nor nostrils for drawing breath, nor ears to hear, nor fingers for handling, and their feet are helpless for walking. For a man made them, and one whose own spirit is borrowed molded them. For no one has power as a man to mold a god like to himself, but being mortal, he makes a dead thing by the work of lawless hands. For he is better than the objects of his worship, since he indeed had life, but they never did. Yes, and they worship the creatures that are most hateful. For being compared as to lack of sense, these are worse than all others. Neither as seen beside other creatures are they beautiful so that one should desire them, but they have escaped both the praise of God and his blessing. That's right, JS Genesis. Shalom. All right, things are beautiful. It is raining. It's a little chilly. There's threats of tornadoes. So, um, yeah, I am gonna call it and go to the job and you know sell some auto parts. Y'all have a lovely day. May the Father bless you. Shalom.